Hi everybody, Mr. Soder again. I am here with another lecture for you. This is your weekend assignment for the weekend of April 28th, 29th, 30th, um, in preparation for the AP test. So we're doing this because on the mock exam, it was clear there was some confusion about the classical era and the post-classical era, especially with regard to the empires. So I want to clear some stuff up for you and just kind of simplify everything and just make sure you guys know what really was going on in the classical era and the post-classical era. All right. So I'm going to start with pointing out some of the big concepts again. All right. You guys know this. We've talked about this in detail when we started review in quarter 4. But let me just reference it again. So classical era, first of all, remember the date 600 BCE to 600 CE. Fairly easy to remember. But when you see that on a prompt or in a multiple choice question, that date, you got to think classical era. And then you have to think, okay, what do I remember about the classical era? The big stuff that happens. So there's three things. Trade networks, Silk Roads, Trans-Saharan trade network, Indian Ocean, and Mediterranean Sea. The religions, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, right? And then some of the Chinese philosophies. And then you have the empires, empire building. And we call that, like, in the AP course, like, this is the start of state development or state building. As empire building, you'll see starting here in the classical era, and you see empires in the post-classical, early modern, even the modern era, even to the contemporary era to some degree. So empires, there's a big continuity over time, as are the trade networks and the religions. But they start here in the classical era, okay? So trade networks, religions, empires. We'll come back to the post-classical later, but I want to debrief and just give you the big stuff and really clarify classical era now, okay? So we'll start with the empires, all right? So I'm going to move to the next slide. So here's a little map here. You've got this in my class, in your classical era packets. So this is the map from that packet. So I just want to highlight kind of where we're looking at. These are the major empires here. It's color-coded. So let me just kind of go over them. First of all, in the green, you have the Assyrian Empire, and the red is the Babylonian Empire. Those are kind of like lesser known or like lesser kind of talked about. These are offshoots of the Mesopotamian civilization, that major river valley civilization from the Neolithic era. But these are empires nonetheless. This is in the Middle East. The Jewish people here were conquered by these groups. Okay, so this is Middle East, kind of borrowing from Mesopotamian tradition. But the big ones, all right, the big empires here, the Roman, which is right here, Roman Empire. You have all of Europe. Here's Italy, where Rome is now. Western Europe, France, Spain, England, North Africa, Eastern Europe. This Roman Empire is gigantic. It's kind of one of the major empires of the classical era. And then you have Mauryan and Gupta empires here in India, or South Asia. The Mauryan, we'll talk more about each empire in detail, but this is just where it's located. So I just want you to remember Mauryan, Gupta, South Asia. You have the Qin and Han dynasty of the classical era of China. Han is the major one. Okay. Then you have the Hellenistic kingdom, which is Alexander the Great. All right, Alexander the Great starts really right around here to the north of Greece, then conquers the Greeks, which is also another classical empire. And as he tries to expand his own empire, in doing so, he actually spreads Greek culture, which is known as the Hellenism or Hellenistic culture. And it actually is spread all the way to India, and overlaps into Egypt and the Middle East. So there is Alexander the Great, for example, left behind some of his Hellenistic culture when he named a city in Egypt Alexandria after himself, and it has like remnants of Greek culture. And there's statues here in India with Greek columns, for example. So there's a lot of examples of Greek or Hellenistic influence throughout this region, and that's because of Alexander the Great. Also, the Persian Empire, as we've talked about in our SGI groups, in this yellow area right here. The Persians centered really in Iran. Persians are ruled by dynasties. There are three are here: Achaemenid, Parthian, and Sassanid. The Persians also conquered by Alexander the Great. Persians are great rivals with the Greeks. We'll talk more about that too. Okay, so this is our major empires of the classical era. These are the capital cities and other notable cities of the classical era. So these two here, Cahokia and Tenochtitlan, are in the Americas. Cahokia is North America. It's like in the Ohio River Valley, kind of south of the Great Lakes. Tenochtitlan is in Mexico. So these are early like native peoples developing societies in the classical era. We really don't. We kind of they get lost a lot of times because of the Roman Empire and everything going on here in Europe and Asia, or in Eurasia. But it's important to be aware that there are societies developing in the Americas in the classical era as well. Like I mentioned, Alexandria, which is really right here. There's Constantinople, which really is more relevant to the post-classical era, but it's still a city that does exist here in the Eastern Roman Empire at this time. It is still part of the Roman Empire at this point, although later in the post-classical era it breaks off into the Byzantine. Pataliputra, that is the capital city of the South Asian empires, especially the Mauryan. Persepolis is capital of the Persians, and Athens, the major city of Greece, and Rome, of course, right here, not listed on the map, but Rome, just right in here where the mouse is. That's the city-state of Rome, which is the center of the Roman Empire. Okay, so I'm going to give you some of the now. I'm going to pause in a few minutes, but I'm going to let you do some thinking. But I am going to actually just give you kind of a rundown of these empires individually. All right. But first, just like what do they have in common? Kind of all of them. So their economies are agriculturally based. I put this at the bottom of the screen here. Their economies are agriculturally based. Remember, industrialization doesn't happen until 1750. This is well before that. So economies are agriculturally based. Agriculture is relatively new to the world at this time. But all economies revolve around agriculture and the production of food. Empires also go hand in hand with another major concept here in the classical era of trade routes. All right, empires connected by trade routes, and they kind of feed off trade routes and are support. Or some empires actually exist because of trade routes, and other times it's trade routes are made possible because of empires and the safety that the governments protect or provide to merchants who want to trade. Empires, as they are pretty large bodies of land, they necessitate a government. They need organization. So you see a lot of law codes developing here in order to govern this large area of land. And also, our old friend, and I say that sarcastically, everybody, patriarchy. Patriarchy is a continuity throughout history, throughout world history, and it is no exception here. Societies are patriarchal. All right, so let's go to the Roman Empire. Just a few things about the political techniques and the techniques of political administration of the Roman Empire. Okay, so Rome and most of these empires have strong leaders. All right, you have Octavian, Julius Caesar, Marcus Aurelius, Nero. Those are just some examples of Roman emperors. Not all of them are great people, but there is a time in Rome called the Pax Romana for about 200 years where this whole Roman Empire was kind of living in a relatively peaceful time. Rome had an incredibly strong military, a really well-disciplined army. They're kind of known as an empire that reached like military perfection in the way they're able to conquer and kind of just be very successful in battles against their enemies. Specific enemy with Rome was the city-state of Carthage, this one right here. Carthage is located in North Africa across the Mediterranean Sea from Rome. So Rome had a strong navy as well. So the military is very strong. But Rome was really smart too. The Roman leaders, when they conquered areas, they actually were able to give citizenship to conquered people, and they were they entertained people. They provided bread and circuses, if you remember that from ninth grade. Gladiator fights. There was public saunas and bathhouses, and Roman cities were really well developed. There's great urban planning in Rome with sewers and wide streets, drainage systems, and plumbing, and it's pretty amazing. Roman engineers were incredibly just really good at what they did. Roman roads are also known for being the best of the classical era. Even like at this time, you could put two cars on a road the Romans built in the classical era, and they could fit. And there's also sewers too for drainage. So the Roman road system, Roman engineers were pretty awesome. The Roman Empire was not great about religious tolerance until Christianity really became more solidified near the end of the Roman Empire. That's the only kind of thing you would say in terms of like accepting conquered people that wasn't so great. Romans did not tolerate Christians. In fact, Christians were persecuted early on in the Roman Empire's existence. Remember, we're talking about 600 to 600 here. We'll touch more on Christianity later, but Christianity does become the official religion of the Roman Empire under Constantine. Remember, Rome gets so big that the Roman emperors decide to divide Rome in half, thinking that would make it more sustainable. However, when Constantine takes over and makes Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire, it moves the capital city of the empire to here, which at the time the city was called Byzantium. He changed the name to Constantinople and moved all the resources and engineers to this area, making the city much more defensible and kind of a better fortified to withstand the many invasions and attacks that were starting to happen. So Rome was being attacked by Huns and barbarians who really admired and wanted more to part of Roman culture actually, but they constantly attacked Rome's borders, and eventually the Roman Empire fell due to invasions. The Eastern Roman Empire actually lived on. The barbarians could not actually scale the city walls of Constantinople. But Western Rome fell and descended to the Dark Ages, which we'll talk about in the post-classical era. Other reasons for the fall of Rome, besides invasions, there's again just the sheer size of it made it really hard to defend. The military could not reach every border and defend against every attack. It just wasn't possible. Romans did try to divide the empire and make that more possible by dividing the empire into smaller units, like provinces or states. And there was Roman governors of every section of the Roman Empire, but Rome just got too big to defend. There's also inflation, money problems, economic issues in the empire itself. Okay? So I know I said a lot there, but I guess I'd want to start with this. Pause this if you have to. The video's clip's about to end. However, think about Roman administrative techniques and why Rome fell. And also think about what are the major similarities that you know so far about classical empires.